press the pound key.
You're talking to him or to me?
To attend the meeting, press 1. To schedule, reschedule. Enter the meeting ID number followed by the pound key.
We can see a live picture of the senator now as he is approaching the podium. He is expected to announce that he will not run for re-election next year. He will not run for re-election next year. Bingaman is currently serving his 5th term, 28 years in the Senate, the most senior member of the congressional delegation from New Mexico by far. It was widely expected that he would run for another term, and this comes as something of a surprise to many political observers, and it throws the entire New Mexico political scene into turmoil. It's not certain now who would run for the Democrats or who for the Republicans. Let's go to Senator Bingaman. He's not ready. He's got that statement there in his pocket, pulling it out, looking at his watch. Maybe he's going to wait till 1:30. Obviously, there are a lot of potential matchups here, but the whole thing is totally wide open. It was pretty certain that Heather Wilson was looking at running on the Republican side, but she had not yet made a decision as to whether she would run against Jeff Bingaman. Former Governor Gary Johnson, who's been making noises about running for president, is back in the political scene very much obviously and could run against Bingaman, although he's never indicated, at least publicly, that he's interested in doing that. On the Democratic side, there are a lot of possible contenders, and this opens up a number of possibilities. Congressman Martin Heinrich from Albuquerque, who was just elected to a second term after a very tough race, who polls very favorably. Former Governor Bill Richardson, whose poll numbers are down, but who is the consummate politician. Here we go. Let's see what Senator Bingaman has to say. Well, fooled us again, huh?
Seems sort of like a wake around here.
Senator Bingaman waiting in the Hotel Andaluz
we should probably wait
to announce that he is not running for re-election.
Okay, you tell me when.
Okay. We have 2 minutes.
Oop.
Okay.
Well, somebody's telling him 2 minutes. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about who's likely on the Democratic side. Former Governor Bill Richardson, in a recent statewide poll, had only a 34% favorable rating, considerably down from where he was 3 or 4 years ago before all the scandals in his administration broke. But, of course, Richardson, as I was saying, is a consummate politician. He often looked at running for the Senate when he was in Congress, but always decided that he could not really take on Pete Domenici, who was then the U.S. Senator, one of the 2 senators, with a lot of chance for success. So he never really made that race. But he's got to be tempted now. There are still some issues hanging over his head from his administration. But again, it would be very difficult for anybody who knows New Mexico politics to say Bill Richardson would not run. Martin Heinrich, obviously a fresh face, a man who has won 2 difficult elections in a swing district here in Albuquerque, has not won a statewide race, has not run a statewide race, but would have to be considered a prime candidate on the Democratic side. Heather Wilson, as we mentioned, has been looking at this race really hard. She did run for the Senate in 2008 when Pete Domenici left, but she lost a statewide Republican primary to Steve Pierce, who is now back in Congress. Steve Pierce would be a likely candidate again this time. All right. Are we ready now to go to Andaluz? All right. Heather Wilson, Steve Pierce, we could potentially see another Republican primary matchup in 2012. Although I would think the Republicans probably would be a little bit shy about that because that certainly undermined their chances in 2008, and then Tom Udall won the Senate seat. All right, let's go to Senator Jeff Bingaman.
Recent veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan.
U.S. Senate next year, 2012. Representing the people in New Mexico is obviously a great honor. It's a great responsibility. It's one that I've had now for 28 years, and of course I will continue with that through the remainder of this Congress, through the end of 2012. But at the end of this Congress, I will have been in public service for 34 years, 4 years as Attorney General of the state, and 30 years in the U.S. Senate. At the end of this Congress, I believe it will be the right time for me to step aside and allow someone else to serve the state. It's not easy to get elected to the Senate. It's obviously not easy to make the decision to leave the Senate. There's obviously important work to be done. There's important work that still remains to be done today, and there will be important work that remains to be done at the end of this Congress, but that will undoubtedly be true at the end of every future Congress as well. I think the simple truth is there's no ideal time to leave the Senate. I'm very proud of my service in the Senate, service to the people of New Mexico. I'm very proud of the work that my staff here in New Mexico does for the people of the state, have done and continue to do for the people of the state, and I'm proud of the work that my staff in Washington, D.C. Does for the people of New Mexico and for the nation. And we will continue with that through the remainder of this Congress. When I first started my work in the Senate in 1983, and Ann and John and I, and let me introduce them, I should have done that at the beginning. My wife, Ann Bingaman, right here, and our son, John Bingaman, his fiancée, Marlena Perron, they're here with me today. But when Ann and John and I moved to Washington in 1983, it was never our thought that that was going to be a permanent move. And we had always considered New Mexico our home. We've cherished the time we've been able to spend in New Mexico during the nearly 3 decades since I went to serve in the Senate. And at the end of this term, we look forward to once again living in New Mexico and pursuing other challenges. So that was the statement I had, and I'm glad to answer any questions anyone has.
Senator, what's the biggest achievement of your long career in the U.S. Senate?
Well, I haven't tallied up what the various achievements are. I think we've done some good in a variety of areas, and I think we have a great opportunity to do some more good this year and next year in this final Congress. So I would like to get further into this final Congress, see what we're able to do, and give you a full accounting at that point.
What will you be doing in retirement?
Why are you leaving right now after 28, 30 years by the time you step down?
Well, after 30 years, I think I've given this my best effort, and I think this is a good time for me to make the decision. And so a lot of factors go into a decision like that, but this seems like the right time, and that's why I'm doing it now.
All right, Senator Jeff Bingaman has, just as we expected, announced he will not seek re-election in 2012 for a 6th term in the U.S. Senate. Of course, 3 years ago, we were startled when Senator Pete Domenici, who had served 6 terms, suddenly announced that he would not run for re-election for health reasons. Senator Tom Udall was elected to his seat the year following. So now we've lost 2 U.S. senators with immense seniority, which is a problem for the state because Congress is based on seniority. Power in Congress is based on seniority. And now we will have 2 U.S. senators with very little seniority, and our House members also have very little seniority. Jeff Bingaman was probably best known as the anti-politician politician. Never loud, never flashy, never very aggressive publicly. Much more policy-oriented, much more cerebral, much more respected than many politicians in the Senate. Hardly ever on national TV, hardly ever interviewed, and even here in New Mexico, not pushing a lot of his image, pushing a lot of his issues, just quietly working hard for many years. Some people like him, some people don't like him, but I think he is widely respected no matter what the political views of the people of New Mexico. And the other thing about Jeff Bingaman is, going to this respect, in each of his 5 elections, he did have a couple of contests which were relatively close. The first one against Jack Schmidt in 1982 when he won by 8 points, 54-46. He had another 8-point victory in 1994. But every other race that he ever ran, he won by 20 points or more. So that speaks, I think, quite a bit to the respect that people have for Jeff Bingaman. What happens now? Very much up in the air. I think we'll see a lot of scrambling. We'll have continuing coverage of today's surprising developments on News 13 at 4 o'clock and at 5:30.